dependency injection. Right way to do it is to do it in the module init, and these of course are global variables.
Yeah.
It's a very special case.
Yeah, so I understand. Yeah, you are talking about a specific use case, but in general, I would argue that each package, let's say, can have a, let's say, constructor and can have its.
In general, yes. But what I would like is going to have avoid global variables. But I would like to add a note. There are some cases where global variables are the right thing to be considered, or something like that. So basically, I don't want to have like a newcomer in the team saying, "Okay, I want to have like some module initialization stuff," and then he goes and makes a dependency injection mess. Like that's not maintainable code. That's like pretending that you're writing best practices where you're doing worst practices.
Not necessarily. We're not talking about this. I can go through something like this, for instance. We can open, let's say, I can demonstrate some here code. Let's go to this. I don't know. Let's go through something like this. What I wanted to say is basically instead of, for instance, we have a package here, P2P. We have a constructor. It takes a specific set of
That's fine. That's fine. I agree with this best practice. Like obviously, if you want to have code that can be tested, you can just willy-nilly, like putting stuff in global variables. I just would like to have a mention in our document that there are exceptions. Okay.
Yeah, I think the exception. I think the exception Viso is talking about is the stuff you've done with the logger mobbing in your init.
Exactly. Even those, no, to be honest, even those I would like to, for instance, you can see here, these should not be here. It's
one thing I would like to add here, especially for logs, having a global variable for the log, which basically is a very common pattern. You just make a, like in your module, somewhere we have an object that's called var logger equals, like initialization of the logger with your module name, right? It's also a very common pattern.
Yeah.
So if you start passing the logger in a dependency injection, you're doing it wrong because there are all sorts of functions that actually need access to the log in order to write to the logger.
Well, it depends. I would argue this because it depends. But in general, yes. For the logger, as I started early, I said for the logger, I would. It's a bit, a gray area. You can have it as a global variable. It's not a problem. But sometimes in some different use cases, depending on what type of what your logger does, it could be injected. There is no issue to be injected in your constructor. I mean, the same way as we do here. A logger is just another.
So basically, the points I'm making is that because once the code base starts growing and becomes big, and there are a lot of dependencies between things and everything, like all the rules become fuzzy. The coding standards are. I agree that they're essential. That in general, this is how we should do it, but you should always leave room for exceptions. Don't make it too strict. In the sense that it's like dependency injection. It's good in general, but if you take it too far, then you create spaghetti.
Yeah, indeed, I agree with you. I agree with you. But this was not my point here was not specifically talking about specific type of libraries or whatever. It's just clean. Let's say if you have to pass it, just pass it to your constructor and construct your object and pass it back to whoever wants to use it. And if it's possible, do not use global variable. I think this is what you wanted to say, Dimitri, that basically there are exceptions.
Yeah, I'm fine with this. I guess the written here, that's fine. It's good. I avoid it as much as possible, but there are cases that it's where it's the right thing to do. As simple as that.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else want to add something on here? I guess we are also aligned with this one. This is something that I also saw. Basically, for instance, one of the examples is our routers. In many cases, we call, let's say, we have this routing, and then we create our, onboarding.get metadata, and then here instead of, let's say, attaching all these methods to our handler, we are calling some functions, and we are basically passing database, passing some global variables. What I wanted to say is that basically we should create object that will have these methods, and you just call them like this without the need to explicitly pass whatever dependency they need to. The dependencies will be on the REST server itself. So if we want to access a database, it will be on in here. If we want to access whatever is needed for these routes, we can find them here, and not pass them one by one in different things. And when we group, actually, it's a nice thing to group. When we group, especially based on, let's say, a namespace, we can have a separate object that has the logic of that namespace separated than the other. Is it something that makes sense to you? Is it something that, what do you guys think?
I think it's fairly good for readability, and as far as dependency injection, like you mentioned, I think it's great to have everything referenced from like the pointer receiver, like the REST server, like you mentioned, having the database. I think I fully agree with this, and it's been implemented in the code base, so that's great. It's great calling out also the good parts in the code base, not only the bad parts.
Anybody else? Anything? Because what I was observing is that here we were calling some function, let's say get metadata, and then this function was returning the handler, and then we were passing some other whatever objects this specifically this handler needed. All right, so I guess yeah.
We have two comments in the Zoom chat. One is that Gustavo said that the suggestion was already implemented because Gustavo is working on this API.
Right, so, thank you. Yeah.
Yes. And Gabriel sent a question.
Do you guys want me to go through everything and then we come back to comment, or we want to, because I want to try to finish all of them and then we come back, if it's okay with you. What do you think? Or we should go through comment first, because I want to finish at least I have around 20, 30 points here.
Yeah, you can...
Okay, as you wish. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go through and then we come back to question point. Yeah, but please interrupt me if you feel that you need to, you disagree. Feel free. All right, so also this is agreed. Okay, these are some small things, but they are somehow important in some contexts. For instance, line sizes. There are sometimes that our lines are very big. Sometimes they are okay, normal, very small, nice. There is, in general, this is not related to both, to be honest, but in general, I think it's a good idea to limit, and we can do this also through the linter. I think we can configure our linters to, let's say, shout when the line size is above, let's say, 80 characters or whatever. We could do something that like this if it helps you guys, because some people are using smaller screens, some people are using bigger screens. There is no perfect, there is not one thing that works the best for everyone, because we are having different screens. But I think in general, having something set like 80 to 100 max characters it's a good start.
Can I make a comment here? Well, you should take into account that like under 80 or hundreds, it's not quite reasonable, because most people are actually these days reading and writing code in, like in widescreens, like 1980 by 1020 is 1080 is the minimum. Like most people have like 4K or 8K displays, and that means typically in their width of view in the editor, they have at least 100 characters. So I don't think, it makes sense to say, oh, we're doing 800 because someone is going to be reading it at VI, like in a terminal. That's sure. I mean, even the people who are actually doing editing with VI in the terminal, I'm not saying VI is bad, even though I'm an MX user. So, but they also tend to have the terminal maximized and they have for more than 100 characters.
Yeah,
What?
exactly what I mentioned. Yeah.
Didn't I thought we interviewed people and asked them if they're Vim users. How did an Emacs user make it to the team?
I admit that I withheld this information. But I'm not religious. I'm only
But
using Emacs for 30 years. I'm not religious.
is it an editor? I'm joking. But to your point, Viso, I think my preference when it comes to this rule is to go with 100 or 100 characters, preferably 8, because I want to optimize working on a laptop for everyone. If
Yeah,
you have a
yeah. So
widescreen,
I agree. I
yeah.
agree. You have, like the IDE open. I think 100 characters is very reasonable.
Yes, even 120. So the idea
Yeah,
is that you optimize for laptop users, and people with big screens can easily create panes or tabs, and they can just like read the code more easily. It's more dense that way.
Very valid point. Yep. I am not, I don't have very strong opinion on this one, to be honest. I don't know how we want to enforce or whether we want to enforce it.
But like you said, the point is to have the role in the linter and have
Yeah,
people
to
configure
help.
their editors to basically draw a line to help them respect this rule.
Yeah. Then maybe we can, let's say, max is 100 characters per line. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Nice. All right. Let's go to the next one. Again, this is about defining your types, your constant interfaces, struct and function, or whatever you have. One of the things uh, is about we try to, let's say, define them on top of the file just to have a clear overview of what things we have and the order of them. Basically, the orders are, let's say, constant, interface, and then struct, and then their methods and whatsoever. And this is something that um, not everybody follows, of course, but there are many cases, there are many, in general, this is what I personally see that we have on the top of the file under the package and the import, of course. You have your constants, then you have your interfaces, then the structure, and then any methods or functions that you want to declare. And what I do, for instance, again, this is some opinionated and it's personal, my personal preference. And I keep the exported functions on top and the ones that are private under. So do you guys have any preference? Do you think this is any ideas, any comments?
One comment. I think this is very reasonable. Okay, it's the natural order of things. I don't know whether we're covering what I'm going to ask for later on. Is that basically when Extract implements an interface, I would like to have, like an implementation assertion, like the common pattern of var underscore interface type equals, like cast nil to your struct pointer. So this has to be somewhere
Yes.
in the module. This is absolutely important, of absolute importance, because you have the compiler, check that you really implement the interface, and even more importantly, it conveys intent that this is intended to implement this interface. So this has to be somewhere. I don't know whether maybe you cover it later on. I haven't looked at the rest of the slides.
Sorry, I didn't get this point. Can you please repeat it? I didn't
Yeah.
understand.
So basically, when you define a type that implements an interface, have a type assertion for the interface somewhere in the module, or maybe in like a JSON file. Basically, this is the common pattern. Let me type really quickly in the chat. So basically, this is a very common pattern. You can see it's absolutely best practice. Okay, I'm typing on the phone, so this is going to be a little slow.
Okay, basically typecasting. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, okay, that's the same thing that I was typing.
yeah,
Yes. So this is absolutely, it has to be someone coded. We have to put this on the coding standard because it pertains to type definitions. Because next I said the compiler checks you and you say, okay, you are not implementing the interface. Please fix it. And it's a clear error message that you're not going to get in a place where you happen to cast it, or even worse, if you do a random cast somewhere, again you get a random error. And the second part conveys intent.
yeah, yeah,
I think this is important and great to have.
yeah, sure, sure. I think, yeah, it's a good idea. I will copy this one and add it to. Okay, so copy. All right. Very difficult to copy something from Zoom. Let's go back. All right. Anything else?
Sorry, I think the pointer goes up front, right? Like the star. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the
okay.
C style.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. All right. I'll fix
So
it.
star mistracked, Neil.
Yeah. Anything else for this? Any comment? I guess we agree. Yeah.
Usually I've seen two styles where people, when they're defining a struct that implements an interface, they either, like I've seen two styles, people do put the constructor at the bottom of the file or at the very top of the file right after the struct. I think it's a preference, but I think we should go with one.
Yeah. Actually, this is what I. So basically, exactly after you start the first function, this is what I also observe is the constructor. So basically, immediately after the start, the section where the start ends, you normally have your constructor. This is what you mean.
Yes, yes, indeed, yeah.
Yeah, this is something common, and we also do it. I think, yeah, it is indeed something common. So yes, I can add also this one. But it is actually implicitly set from this ordering. If we agree with this ordering, yes. So con constructor after dot section. Okay. All right. Okay. We have some agreement. Anything? Anyone else? I can go to the next one then. Okay, this one is a big, yeah. I wanted to have an interactive session on this, on basically writing some code.
Maybe one quick thing about your previous point, mobbing.
Yeah.
I've seen another style where people like would create. Maybe I need to type this if you want to open the chat, but this is how they would do it. They would do and then sorry, let me type it. It's just about organizing your code, and I think I like this too. But basically, they would the same way you would type an interface at each line, they would
Yeah.
group
Yeah.
them in the parentheses, and it makes
Please
for
don't do that.
a
Please
better
don't do
visual
that.
block.
Please
What?
don't do that. It creates rightwards drifts, like unnecessary mental, overhead here. I don't think that's a good idea.
I
For
Really?
I
vars,
also
for vars it's
agree.
okay, but for types, I think we shouldn't do that.
I agree with Dimitri.
Interesting. But
Yeah.
generally, when you have one interface and it's implemented by one struct, and you group them together, it gives a good visual representation. But yeah, it's a matter of agreement, really, with whatever the team agrees on.
I have seen also this pattern, to be honest. It's a bit, it doesn't feel natural for me. It doesn't, for me personally. Again, this is my opinion, so don't. It's just point of view, it doesn't feel very natural and, you know, the go way to do it. I would do it, yes, for some, let's say, constants or some vars, but for
Interesting. Yeah.
interfaces, I would just break them into their own sections.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Yeah, so this is another thing that is famous, accept interfaces and return structs. Basically, the idea here is when we have a constructor and we want to basically pass some dependency, we just pass them as interfaces, and what we return is not an interface, but rather than the struct. So I don't know if this makes sense, if you get the context, but this helps a lot with testing your code. So when you are returning an interface, there are cases where you have to return, of course, interface. It's not like again, it's not a strict rule, but there are cases where let's say when you just have to return a pointer to the struct, and then from there you can do all your whatever testing you need, and yeah, it's just more easier to test.
Can I add something here?
Yeah, sure.
So I agree in general that this should be the primary constructor of the object should return the stack pointer. But we have a case where we have, like types that are not defined, outside the module. So there is a consumer outside the module and he expects an interface, right? So if you return the struct, it will still work, but you will leak the type. So I think it's better in this case to have a second constructor that just uses the first constructor and returns the interface.
Yes, but this should, is it for, it's not for every case. This is, yeah, for sure. In some cases,
Yeah, no, it's for types basically that are defined, for example, in the global model thing. I think we should have a second constructor. The test obviously uses the first constructor, and the first constructor is tested. So the second constructor also uses the first constructor. The only thing that changes is that basically returns the interface.
Yeah. Sorry, Hamza, you wanted to add something?
No, it's not a case of accept interface, return interface. It's a special case for the constructor to return interface. And, like in general, in things that, there are cases where you want to really hide to not leak the implementation type. So in these cases, yeah. But the case is especially for the constructor. So basically, you enter the entry point of the code in the cross-module dependency is that basically it works with the interface and doesn't leak the type. That's the only thing. So, in the case of you have a method, like that returns a new pointer to the struct, well, yes, the compiler is going to turn it into the interface. So that's fine. Again.
Anybody else? Anything
So
else?
what Visor is saying is that that you have, or you make two constructors. One returns the struct by default, and a second one returns an interface. Is this it?
Sorry,
I thought.
Sorry, no, wait, not always, right? This is what, it's not like the rule for everything.
It's not always. It's a special case.
When needed, yeah.
So you see, that's the thing about the coding standards. You need to understand that they're full of special cases, and if we want to be strict about the coding standards, then we should also document the exceptions.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I guess
I was completely like doing this differently. I would return an interface because the interface for me represents the contract of the behavior, and generally I want to keep the implementation private. So I'm kind of surprised that we have to return structs here. I know it's easier for tests because you don't have to cast.
Yeah. Sorry. The reason for that, okay, so the public interface that you are using should be the thing that returns the interface in general, unless you are inside the module or you're writing a test for the module. So if you're writing a test in the module, right, you care about the struct because you may want to inspect,
the internal
elements of the struct as part of the test. So that's the internal, the protected interface. Say that it's like package wide. right? But if you're getting access outside the package, you should not look the type, return the interface.
Exactly. So why don't we just return the interface, but then while testing, you will just cast back to the struct. I know that casting is not so fun, but that's what I would usually do.
Yeah, it's as like the suggestion is here. This is like standard coding practice. Like empirically, it does help a little bit because it makes it easier to write tests. So
Yeah.
like if you are working within the packets, I mean, there's no harm done by working directly with the struct type. It's actually beneficial for many things.
Yes,
Public
and
images though always interfaces. Like if it's like a capitalized thing that gets called outside the module or the packets, then it has to return an interface.
yeah, and
Yeah, that
another
makes
thing
sense.
is also typecasting. I think typecasting is not fun for sure. It's something that uh, it adds
Again, let
some.
the compiler do it for you by returning,
Uh,
by having the
uh,
constructor that returns the interface, the compiler is going to check. It's important.
yeah. So special cases.
I'm sorry,
Right.
Visor. How do you let the compiler do it for you? Like by creating
If you create a struct and your function is returning an interface, right? So even if you have to cast, it's going to be a static casting effect. So you just return it.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Anybody else? Anyone wants to add something else? Do we want this? Are we okay with this? All right. And no means yes. Let's go to the next one, which is related to what we just talked about. Um, in the constructors, basically, we want to return a pointer to the start. There are some reasons, actually many reasons. They do not apply always. I mean, sometimes you might have just a small struct and it doesn't have, too much data there in order to, let's say, have this copying or memory allocation overhead and so on and so forth. But the general idea is when you return your the type in the constructor, normally you return an error also, where let's say if there is a need for some error checking inside the constructor, you return also the error. But the main point is here is just return the pointer to the start. In many cases, this helps because sometimes when, let's say, if we were just returning the struct itself and not the pointer to it, let's say down the line, we might need to access some fields of that struct, and if they're empty, it will be a bit difficult to reason about the code and the error. But if it was, let's say, a pointer, we would immediately get a panic because we were trying to access some data on a nil pointer. So this is also something that personally has helped me in the past. It's a good practice. Um, you can easily catch this type of errors. Of course, it's runtime error. I mean, even some tests can you can using your test you can find this type of errors. But yeah, there are these reasons. I think most of us we agree on this because it's a very idiomatic thing to do in Go. We see it a lot everywhere. Anyone against it? I guess we go to the next point then. Yeah, so this is another thing that is also, I think it's also known. Basically, when let's say there are, by the way, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so basically, this one is about uh, error, any error variable. So the convention is always to have ERR, that is for error, and when we need, let's say, any additional error, let's say if our function needs some other error, we pretend this error and whatever after it. But the idea is just to have it either in front or some other cases in the end. This is something very simple and clear. I don't think. I guess you guys are fine with this. So let's go to 9. This is another thing that we in the code sometimes we don't do it, sometimes we do it. It's a good idea to wrap your errors to return them back. Wrapping allows us to reason about where the issue is. It gives some context basically about in which place the error comes from. So basically here, let's say the file, when I try to open a file, there is an error. We check if it's not nil, and we wrap the error using, let's say, this one, or there is another function in errors.wrap. We pass it, and using this format, you just wrap it around. This is something good also to do. Yeah. Please do not forget this one. Just wrap them.
If I may jump in here. So we are going to be using context in telemetry. And so context is going to be very important or like it's going to be something that we need to utilize very often. And so it's very recommended to just add everything to the context and then pass the context because telemetry is going to be expecting context.
This is not related to, this is just
I know it like I think in the context you can also pass the same information, so it might be just good practice to pass it.
Okay, you mean let's say the error that is returned, let's say, or which?
Yeah, so the error where it happened.
So can I add something? I don't think it's a good idea to actually put the context into the error you're doing, because the context is quite a complex object. It has channels, possibly coroutines, squaring, and all that. That means that if you put it in the error, you make it not eligible for garbage collection as the stacks are winding, and may leave longer than you think.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just a simple thing. You have a function and it returns an error. It's not about talking about any type of actual context, Golang context. It's just talking about returning the error and wrapping the error that was returned by another call, whether it's the system call or whether it's another call. Maybe we can go through that, what you're talking about in another. I think I have some.
Yeah, I think it's something else.
Yeah. All right. Next one.
Wait,
another.
Go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, basically, I just saw, like the Jim's comment about named errors. We should add something about name errors. So wrapping is good when the error is coming from something that you called from. So you recall, yes, you should wrap it. But if you're the source of the error, you should emit a named error. So basically, just have a var error, whatever equals errors new, and if you have to pass information, you may even make it a struct that implements the error interface. But it's important that, the sources of the errors themselves return named errors. The consumers of the errors that basically propagate them further, yes, they should wrap. Again, is that in line with what you were thinking?
But I think Dawood was talking about naming your errors by doing at the top of the file a bunch of variables, and every variable is an error.
Yeah,
basically,
in fact, for the errors, because they're sort of like part of your interface, you should actually put them in a separate module, typically like errors.go within the package, and you'd find the named errors there. That's very common as well.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, not always. I mean, if there is just one error, it can be also.
Yeah. If it's one error, yes, but just define it on the file you're using. It just put it in the top.
Yeah, for sure. The gist of it is basically what I wanted to emphasize on this is just wrapping errors. And as Dimitri said, yes, when you are not, let's say, depending on any other function, you just return a new error in this format. You don't have anything to wrap. So you return it, and let's say if this function called XYZ, then it will wrap the error coming from here and its own error message, and it will pass it down the line. So somebody who calls read config file can know, the chain of the errors. So define,
Can I
yeah.
can I ask a question here? Are you guys familiar with the X errors package? It's in one of the Golang.org packages. Basically, this is where the wrapping of the errors originated, and later on they pulled it into the core so that FMT error F wraps the added error Cs, etc., etc. But there's still one advantage that the X errors package has over just FMT error F. Instead, you can use X errors error F because it keeps stack too, which is very important.
Yes.
Yes. So we might consider using X errors instead of just FMT error.
Yeah.
Just
Sure.
suggestion. It doesn't have to be decided night or X error.
No, it's a good suggestion. Actually, I agree. X error. This is what it is.
Yeah, it's in golang.org/X error or something like that. It's been a while since I actually wrote that import, but yes.
Okay. Unwrap. We have unwrapping. All right. I will try to. I came across it, but I don't remember what. But yeah, it's a good idea. I agree with you. Okay. Should I go to the next one? I think I did a mistake.
Yeah.
We should go through the chat because it's piling up and we lose context. Okay, basically what David said is what we. All right. Yeah, regarding this one, this is also very simple. Please do not log unless it is very necessary. Normally you log when you do not return some errors. Normally, when you have a function that you want to give some observability to, but some error happened. But just return the error, and it's the responsibility of the caller to deal with it, whether to log it or not, or in general. Again, there are cases where this will not be valid, obviously, but the pattern that I see is when we have a function that, let's say we have a processor and we are doing some background process, or just something on top of my mind, and there is not another caller, it's just that function gets called, and it does not return, let's say, an error. It's just a background process, whatever. In that case, yeah, we can just log the error there. But in other cases,
Can I add something here? I think that not logging anything at the source of the error is a mistake. You have to do log.error. You can do a log.debug, but you should have more context that you might want to put it in the log, especially when running with debug, so that it helps debug. And ultimately, yes, you're going to get the error at the top level, but if you're debugging the system, you're going to have a hard time finding what's happening without the log, the source of the error. Not necessarily the absolute source, like maybe a level up or two. You're doing some manipulation, you have some step, and generate an error. Log something to help debugging. Not always, sometimes.
Yeah, sure. But even debugging, I would argue that, yeah,
log.debug, not log.error. It's different because log.error has no place being logged in the source. It's going to be logged at the top level, and it's going to have context.
I'm not okay. I'm not even talking about, let's say, I'm talking about simple, even a format.printf in these cases, and you put error. There are cases where we use.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say, I don't disagree with this. In general, we shouldn't, but we need to make consideration for debug logging for errors that are not immediate, that need some context to debug. That's all I'm suggesting. So it should be some sort of exception here, I think. So it's to say, in general, don't log errors.
No, log errors. Of course, in general, we should log errors, but do not log them when you return the error. This is-
So if you add in general comma, don't log errors in functional returns errors, that conveys the intent. And we can add something about an exception. Sometimes it helps to have log.debug, debug logs, like at the place where.
So
Yep.
so we are handling logging in telemetry, like info and debug and whatnot. So we're handling different, like even local logging. We're going to be handling that in telemetry as well. So there is a collector that uses Zaplogger that will be used to log things locally. And so we can choose to use only that logger, or we could just choose to forward to all the collectors. So it's a bit dynamic, but I think that was the plan to actually handle the logging using telemetry.
Works for me as long as we have something to debug. Like I will be happy. Just don't give me naked errors that like you just see a message and you're scratching your head trying to figure out what happened. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, like you're still allowed to use logging when it makes sense, but I'm just pointing out that we will have that option as well.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Are you using the Zap logger, the Uber sync?
Yes.
Okay, that's a pretty good logger. Okay, it can do a lot of things. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me play up some debug. Debugging. Let's say log. Some do. I don't know what this is the right name. Okay. Maybe, yeah. All right. We go to the next one. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt mobbing, but
Yeah.
how many points we have in this presentation?
We have around. We don't have the time, right?
Yes,
have-
exactly. And I'm thinking
Well-
that we should do another round next week,
Yeah,
part 2 of the section.
I was
Yes, that would be good.
expecting this, to be honest, because that's why I wanted to go through this. Yeah, but anyway, it's okay. No worries. I think it's interesting because this is at least
Yes,
what I feel.
it's important. And after this discussion and agreement, I think we should create a code guideline and make it available for people that
In the
come.
linter. Yeah.
And
This is the
also,
idea.
yes, configuring the linter.
Yes. All right, we have 5 more minutes. I can go through few, maybe one more if you guys are okay.
Hey, I'm sorry. Also, one more thing. It would be to come to a understanding and conclusion about the standards that we should follow as a team. It might be better to create like an issue or like a document, some sort that we can
This-
comment on it and then vote on, different approaches instead of like doing it over a call.
No, of course. This was just a small, I wanted to just go through this and the result of this would be, in a README file to define all these things.
Got it. Thanks.
Unless
Maybe
you
we
guys
should do that.
feel this is not necessary for
Well,
the
I mean,
rest.
maybe we should do that once Kanisha said, just that until the next week. And then the next call would be the agreements. Next week.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. All right, yeah. I can go through this one also, maybe this is a quick one. In testing, generally, apart from this point, in general, testing is good. We should embrace it. We should test our code. And yeah, so something nice that I personally like, this is again, and I see it more often, is table-driven test. And I placed this on purpose here. It's not a map, and it's a struct. Sorry, it's just a slide. And The next point is about the elements in maps are not ordered in randomly retrieved. So do not rely on ordering for maps. Maps are not ordered. So going back to the same point here, when we have something like this, when we try to test, let's say, a function, we have a table of inputs and what we expect. Instead of having this, we can convert it to a map. So we do not somehow introduce some ordering bug, whatever, because in our mind we follow, you know, we always follow some ordering, whatever it is when we implement something. So it is very, you know, preferred to have random test cases running against a function like this. And yeah, as I see here, I say it here, you know, you do not rely on specific ordering. This basically leads to better and more robust code. I think we do it, and there are some cases this is a bit difficult to do table-driven tests, and yeah, I understand that. But in general, whenever it is possible, this is a good idea. And there is actually a whole, you know, there are books written regarding testing strategies and how to test, but obviously it's out of the context here. We are just trying to add some basic, you know, standards or guidelines or best practices. I guess that's it for today. I will stop here, and yeah, we can always continue from here in another meeting, and I will continue to add some few more stuff. Yeah, feel free to add your own things. I will open a PR somewhere, I think in VMS.
Can I add something here? It's a little fun story. I don't know whether you know about that, but initially, when in the first versions of Go, there was absolutely the order of ordering was unspecified. And they did happen to do it randomly because it had certain advantages. And then people started relying on it. And in the end, they ended up making part of the language specification that the order of reigns in the map is random. So not only you cannot rely on it being the same, you can actually rely on it being random, pseudo-random, sorry.
Yeah, it is not random. Yeah, it does not guarantee random also, yeah, for sure, because you might get them in.
No, it is guaranteed to be random. It's part of the language specification. It's not unspecified. It's random.
Yeah, this is exactly. Yeah, it is random, but it might be that it will return you 1, 2, 3 in the order you wrote them. This is what I say. But in general, it is random. All right. All right, guys, that's it.
Thank you, Mobin, and we will continue this discussion next technical discussion. Thank you so much.